Hey, shalom, everybody. BigDaddyBigz here, your productreviewdude.com, and today's Bible reading from the Tree of Life version of the Bible is today's January 25th, by the way, and today's reading is Leviticus 7 through 10, and I don't have a lot of time today, so I'm going to have to just kind of go through this pretty quick. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. This is the Torah of the trespass offering. It is most holy. In the place where they slaughter the burnt offering, he is to slaughter the trespass offering, and he is to splash its blood around the altar. He should offer all of its fat, the fat tail and the fat that covers the innards, along with the 2 kidneys and the fat that is on them, which is by the loins, plus the cover on the liver that he is to remove with the kidneys. Then the Cohen should burn them up as smoke on the altar for an offering made by fire to Adonai. It is a trespass offering. Every female among the Kohanim may eat it. Every male among the Kohanim may eat it. It is to be eaten in a holy place. It is most holy. Fellowship offerings of Kohanim. As is the sin offering, so is the trespass offering. There is one Torah for them. They are for the Cohen who makes atonement with them. The Cohen who offers anyone's burnt offering, that Cohen is to have for himself the hide of the burnt offering which he has offered. Every meal offering that is baked in the oven, and all that is prepared on the flat plate and on the pan is to belong to the Cohen who offers it. Every grain offering, whether mixed with oil or dry, belongs to all the sons of Aaron equally. Now is the Torah of the sacrifice of fellowship offerings, which may be offered to Adonai. If he brings it for a thanksgiving, then he is to present with the sacrifice of thanksgiving matzah cakes mixed with oil, matzah wafers anointed with oil, and fine flour cakes mixed with oil. He is to present his offering with the sacrifice of his fellowship offerings for thanksgiving, along with the cakes of bread with chametz. From each he is to offer one out of every offering as a gift to Adonai. It will belong to the Cohen who sprinkles the blood of the fellowship offerings. The meat of the sacrifice of his fellowship offerings for thanksgiving is to be eaten on the day of his offering. He is not to leave any of it until the morning. But if the sacrifice of his offering is a vow or a freewill offering, it is to be eaten on the day that he offers his sacrifice. On the next day, what remains of it may be eaten. But what remains of the meat of the sacrifice on the 3rd day is to be burned up with fire. If any of the meat of the sacrifice of his fellowship offerings is eaten on the 3rd day, it will not be accepted, nor will it be credited to him who offers it. It will be a foul thing, and the soul who eats any from it will bear his own iniquity. The meat that touches any unclean thing is not to be eaten. It is to be burned up with fire. As for the meat, everyone who is clean may eat it, but the soul who eats of the meat of the sacrifice of fellowship offerings belonging to Adonai, having his uncleanness on him, that soul is to be cut off from his people. If anyone touches any unclean thing, whether the uncleanness of man or an unclean animal, or any unclean detestable thing, and eats some of the meat of the sacrifice of fellowship offerings belonging to Adonai, that soul is to be cut off from his people. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Bnei Yisrael, saying, You are to eat no fat of a bull or sheep or goat. The fat of a dead animal and the fat of a torn animal may be used for any other service, but you must not eat it. For if anyone eats the fat of the animal from which an offering is made by fire to Adonai, then the soul who eats it is to be cut off from his people. You are not to eat any blood, whether it is from a bird or an animal, in any of your dwellings. Whoever it is who consumes any blood, that soul is to be cut off from his people. Then Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Bnei Israel, saying, Whoever brings the sacrifice of his fellowship offerings to Adonai is to present his offering to Adonai out of the sacrifice of his fellowship offerings. With his own hands he is to bring Adonai's offerings by fire. He is to present the fat with the breast, so that the breast may be waved for a wave offering before Adonai. The Kohen is to burn up the fat as smoke on the altar, but the breast will belong to Aaron and his sons. The right thigh you are to give to the Kohen for a contribution out of the sacrifices of your fellowship offerings. The one among Aaron's sons who offers the blood of the fellowship offerings and the fat is to have the right thigh for a portion. For the breast of the wave offering and the thigh contribution I have taken from Bnei Israel out of the sacrifices of their fellowship offerings, and have given them to Aaron the Kohen and to his sons as their portion forever from Bnei Israel. This is the anointed portion of Aaron and the anointed portion of his sons out of the offerings of Adonai made by fire on the day when he presented them to serve Adonai in the office of Kohen. Adonai commanded these to be given to them from Bnei Israel on the day that he anointed them. It is their portion forever throughout their generations. This is the Torah of the burnt offering, the grain offering, the sin offering, the trespass offering, the ordination offering, and the sacrifice of fellowship offerings, which Adonai commanded Moses at Mount Sinai on the day he commanded Bnei Israel to present their offerings to Adonai in the wilderness of Sinai. Leviticus chapter 8. Consecration of the Kohanim. Then Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, Take Aaron and his sons with him, the garments, the anointing oil, the bull of the sin offering, and the 2 rams, and the basket of matzot. Then assemble the congregation at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So Moses did as Adonai commanded him. When the congregation was assembled at the entrance of the tent of meeting, Moses said to the congregation, This is what Adonai has commanded to be done. Moses brought Aaron and his sons and washed them with water. He put the tunic on Aaron, tied the sash on him, clothed him with the robe, put the ephod on him, and tied the skillfully decorated sash of the ephod around him, and fastened it to him. He then placed the breastplate of Aaron, and he then placed the breastplate on Aaron, and inside the breastplate he put the Urim and the Thummim. He set the turban on his head, and on the front of the turban he set the gold plate, the holy crown, just as Adonai commanded Moses. Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and all that was in it, and so consecrated them. He sprinkled the oil on the altar 7 times, and anointed the altar and all its utensils, the basin with its hand, to consecrate them. He poured some of the anointing oil on Aaron's head and anointed him to consecrate him. Then Moses brought Aaron's sons and clothed them with tunics, tied sashes on them, and fastened headbands on them, as Adonai had commanded Moses. Then he brought the bull of the sin offering, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the bull of the sin offering. Moses then slaughtered it, took the blood, and dabbed it onto the horns of the altar with his finger, and so purified the altar. Then he poured out the blood at the base of the altar and consecrated it, to make an atonement for it. He then took all the fat that was on the innards, the cover of the liver, and the 2 kidneys and their fat, and burned it up as smoke on the altar. But the bull and its hide, its flesh and its dung, he burned with the fire outside the camp, as Adonai had commanded. He then presented the ram of the burnt offering, and Aaron his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram. Then Moses slaughtered it and splashed the blood around on the altar. After he cut the ram into its pieces, Moses burned the head, the pieces, and the fat. He washed the innards and the legs with water. Then Moses burned the whole ram up in smoke on the altar. It was a burnt offering for a soothing aroma, an offering by fire to Adonai, and as Adonai had commanded Moses. Then he presented the second ram, the ram of ordination, and Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the head of the ram. Moses slaughtered it, took some of its blood, and put it on the tip of Aaron's right ear, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the great toe of his right foot. Then Moses brought out Aaron's sons, and put some of the blood on the tips of their right ears, on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the great toes of their right feet. Then Moses splashed the blood around the altar. He took the fat tail, and all the fat that was on the innards, as well as the cover of the liver, the 2 kidneys with their fat, and the right hand. Then out of the basket of matzah that was before Adonai, he took 1 matzah cake, 1 cake of oiled bread, and 1 wafer, and placed them on the fat and on the right thigh. He put all these in Aaron's hands and in the hands of his sons, and waved them for a wave offering before Adonai. Then Moses took them from the hands and burnt them up in smoke on the altar with the burnt offering. They were a consecration for a soothing aroma. It was an offering by fire to Adonai. Moses took the breast and waved it for a wave offering before Adonai. It was Moses' portion of the ram of ordination, just as Adonai commanded Moses. Then Moses took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood which was on the altar, and sprinkled it on Aaron, on his garments, and on his sons, and on his sons' garments with him. So he consecrated Aaron, his garments, his sons, and his sons' garments with him. Moses then said to Aaron and to his sons, "Boil the meat at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and eat it there, along with the bread that is in the basket of ordination, as I commanded, saying, Aaron and his sons are to eat it. What remains of the meat and of the bread you shall burn with fire. You are not to go out from the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days, until its days of your ordination are fulfilled, for he will be filling your hands for 7 days. What has been done on this day, Adonai has commanded to be done in order to make atonement for you. You are to stay at the entrance of the tent of meeting day and night for 7 days, and keep Adonai's command, so that you do not die. For so I have been commanded." Thus Aaron and his sons did all the things Adonai commanded them through Moses.